Foundation is back this week with the third episode in Season 3, and this was definitely an Empire-heavy episode, but I didn't mind that. With us seeing exactly how Dawn and Gaal came to be in contact at the end of Episode 2, with Empire's interest in psychohistory, the impending threat of the Mule was something that was even being spoken about and mentioned 3 years prior to the present day when Gaal and Empire met for the first time. With Tauren and Beta also taking something that mattered to the Mule, devastation was already present with his inclusion with the takeover of Calgon, but now it feels like the taking of Maggie has amplified it even more. So with that, let's dive into this episode and break down all that there was to take away from it. Here is Foundation Season 3, Episode 3, Ending Explained. Just to let you know, this video will contain spoilers. The dynamic between the brothers. The three brothers all seem to be on different pages at the moment, but for the first time in what felt like forever, we got a moment where they were bonding and they were actually enjoying each other's company. There was a tradition that's been in place where when the new positions get ascended, they have a drink together, and strength, wisdom and fortitude get spoken as they take a sip. The entire season so far, we've seen the different motives and intentions that each of the characters have. Dawn is working with Gaal Dornick and actually looking to protect Empire and stop its collapse in a few months' time. Day was looking to escape with Song and start a new life somewhere, and Dusk is aiming to not be destroyed like he knows it's almost time for. However, in this moment, it's like they all just stopped for 1 second, were present with one another, and we saw a familiar brotherly love. In the opening part of the episode, it was 3 years before the time period that we're in now, and we saw that Dawn expressed an interest in psychohistory, and through him going to the library and asking for Khal's 9th proof of folding, the librarian mentioned how if anybody were to ask for it, there was somebody that wanted to meet them. This obviously turned out to be Gaal, and it was here where the alliance was formed between the both of them. So they'd been speaking for around 3 years by the time it was the end of episode 2. Showing that they now both had a common enemy in the Mule, whom she didn't feel it was appropriate to talk about yet because he wasn't an immediate threat. A part of this scene that I absolutely loved was when Gaal said to Dawn how she was never in the room to begin with, and then he realized that she was a projection. There was actually this clear infatuation with Gaal that Dawn had, as if there was a level of idolization, because he even mentioned how she made the Cleons feel like finite beings. With the information that he learned from her, and with her advising him to put an enclosure on Calgon, even though it wasn't in the Empire or the Foundation's domain, it was something that was necessary to be able to understand the Mule a bit more along with his motives whilst keeping him contained. However, that obviously didn't happen. Brother Dawn seems to be the only person that's taking the Mule seriously when it comes to the brothers, and with Dusk saying throwaway comments about how there'll be somebody that'll come along and take it from him eventually, he's underestimating just how powerful the Mule is, choosing to not even believe the mind-controlling abilities that he has. This negligence at the moment, even after meeting with the Mule through the projection, showed that Dusk will most likely rue the day that he didn't take it seriously. Then, with regards to Brother Day, within this episode, we saw that his inability to keep his mouth shut cost him the very thing that he cared about most, Song, and his passageway off the planet. Him and Song were planning on leaving and spending what time they had left together without responsibilities, but Day revealed that Demerzel was a robot, and from there she had this reluctance to leave, especially when compared to before. It turned out that when she saw Demerzel and she put those 2 fingers to her arm, it was a sign of the faith, the inheritance, in which they worshipped robots. So in finding out that Demerzel was a robot, that was why she said how she wanted to stay close to her, because due to worshipping, she thought that she'd be able to save them and they'd be the most protected there. However, to follow the inheritance was something that was a crime that was ordinarily punishable by death, but Demerzel didn't do that. Instead, she wiped Song's memory and sent her back to Mycogen, never to return. This obviously broke Day's heart because he cared deeply for her, but at the same time, they were also planning on leaving together. Something which nobody else knew about other than his commander, and now with her gone, he's most likely not going to look to leave. I do wonder if Demerzel has some tricks up her sleeve and maybe she's utilized the loyalty that Song had to do something else for her. We saw that Demerzel was questioning the purpose of her existence, and that seems to be at the core of this extremely well-performed character. So I think there could be more than meets the eye with this. I also think that this could cause some form of conflict between Day and the commander. Day promised to cure his daughter's illness if he agreed to help him leave, and now that Day doesn't seem to have any plans on leaving, he'll have to go back on his promise. How can one offer to cure an illness and then retract it? But they most probably will. So maybe the commander might reveal to the rest of them that he was thinking of leaving, which will cause even more turmoil amongst the group. The Navacula is still a secret, but with the Mule's threat growing larger and larger, and with it seeming like he's going to tear up anything in the galaxy to get what he wants, the Navacula might well be revealed to Dawn very soon. The Mule. The Mule's feature in this episode was one which again just added to the menacing nature that we're seeing him have, and the confidence that he equips himself with so that he can step forward and look to take over the galaxy. The conversation that he had with Brother Dawn through the projection was one which showed his true mindset, and that he wasn't there to be part of any coefficiency, which would mean that he'd be ruled by somebody else. The line, "You have lived comfortably, and war isn't comfortable," when Dawn mentioned how the Mule's actions might trigger a war, it summed up the difference in the both of them. The Mule has had to fight for what he's got throughout the entirety of his life, and you can see that in the way that he presents himself, and he's not afraid of Empire. We saw how easy it was for the Mule to take Calgon. He took it in minutes, so it's going to be interesting to see if the Mule does take the planet which has Empire's naval fleet, which would give him passage to Trantor. There were a couple of other scenes with the Mule which stood out to me a lot. The first was with Pritcher and the fact that he had this fascination with the Mule and wanted to find out who he was and what he wanted. However, once he got close, the Mule entered his mind and said how Pritcher was like him and that he wanted to know who Gaal was. This makes me think a couple of different things about it. Either Pritcher could be a Mentalic, and that's why he reacted like that when he got close to the Mule, with the Mule also saying that he was like him. And it also made me wonder how he knows of Gaal. We know that many of the Mentalics left Ignis with the intention of finding more so that they could be recruited to participate in the battle against the Mule. So I wonder if Pritcher could well be one, but we've just not seen him utilize his powers yet. The bloodshot red eye was a reaction that we've not seen anybody have when the Mule has entered their mind, so it does make me think that there's more to Pritcher than what we've seen. When going back to the first episode of the season, he was aware of the Mule in a way that nobody else really was, believing that he could be this mutant-type being and that he was far more dangerous than a pirate. So I feel he'd only truly know that if he had some kind of intel, so it makes me think that he could well be a Mentalic that's been made aware of what's going on through Gaal. Then, whilst in this scene too, we saw the Mule showing just how strong and powerful he was in a completely different way. The whole conversation about playing the game where it was all about insulting the person opposite with Torin Mallow, and the change in emotion when he was laughing erratically and then getting up close and serious, saying how he was going to flay him and that he'd like it because he'd take control of his mind. It showed that the Mule didn't need to control people's minds to come across as dangerous, he just naturally was. That scene was so tense, and I didn't know where it was going to go, but when Torin used the flash, got to the ship and jumped whilst having Magnifico on board, it's now going to be interesting to see what intel they've got following Magnifico being taken. The music was obviously something that was important to the Mule, as it was said to calm him, and he ultimately executed many officers afterwards. We even saw the Visi Sonar being played in this episode, which in the novel was an instrument that the Mule played to be able to control entire planets. Within the novel, Magnifico was actually a persona that the Mule adopted, so it's interesting that in the show they've made an entirely different character, so the story might deviate slightly. My review of the episode. As per usual with this show, week after week it just keeps getting better and better. This was a very Empire-heavy episode, but I didn't mind it because I'm enjoying seeing the dynamic between the three brothers, and as time's going on, the plot is just thickening, so it's making for some great watching. I would say though that I'd like to see a bit more of Gaal on Ignis or even the Foundation. We've not seen much at all of them, and I just feel like I want to know what's going on with them and how aware they are of the Mule. Brother Day was arguably one of my favourite characters in this episode. The emotional range that Lee Pace has when playing this character is just incredible. That scream that he had towards Demerzel right at the end of the episode was just so powerful to watch, and you could tell that he was hurt by what she did in getting rid of Song. Whilst on the topic of Demerzel, she just knows how to steal a scene, and she's been my favourite character in the show for such a long time now. Another character that I also thought was really well delivered was Gaal. The confidence that she had in speaking with Brother Dawn and the conviction that she had just felt so different to the character that we knew before. Maybe with Selden gone, she feels she has to step up, and that could be why this new attitude that she has is present. I liked it. So far, I think this season is shaping up to be a really strong one. I'd like to see a bit more of the Mule, and I want more scenes like what we had in episode 1 where he took Galgun. Even the intimate ones, like when he was with Torum. I just want to truly understand this villain if he's the big bad wolf of Foundation, and I feel like we're only going to get that through time with him. With the next episode synopsis being Demerzel struggles with the paradox of her programming, Pritcher's true loyalties are revealed, Day sets off on a quest for answers. It looks like it's going to be just as exciting of a watch as what we've had so far. So, there you have it, Foundation Season 3 Episode 3 Ending Explained. If you want to see more videos on Foundation Season 3 being broken down, then check the playlist below. I'm covering every episode of the season. What did you think of this week's episode? Share your thoughts in the comments. As always, thanks for tuning into the video and I'll see you in the next one.